Previous to that, 36 plus years in California. So some of you might remember me from California, and a lot of people are getting to know me from Tennessee now. So I've been painting a long time. So today we're going to do the bird of paradise. And first I wanted to show you some pictures. So I'm going to switch my view to a different camera now so that you can see what we're going to do. So I have some pictures of the bird of paradise, and I wanted you to see how long and pointy the flower pods are. And I wanted to show you this one. This is really cute. One day at a painting seminar in California, that pregnant praying mantis was on the bird of paradise. So I have painted that, and I'm going to show you my painting. And another interesting thing is the dead ones. Look at that stem, all full of color, and then you come here and it's dead. So the dead ones are kind of cool to add in once in a while. And then I took all these outside my office where I painted in California in my home. So I have some terms that I use. Since it's a bird of paradise, here you have, oops, I don't even have it on the right picture. Here you have, let me just lay it down and leave it alone. This is the bird. I call this the collar, the neck and throat. This is the beak. These are the head feathers. And this is the tongue. And then I like to show you the leaves. You can see how raggedy some of the leaf edges are and the different colors. This is the back spine of a leaf and it's pink. Here's the back spine of the leaf and it's yellow going into greens. Check this leaf out. This is the front side of the leaf. And that center vein is a deep pink. And this one is yellow. It's the same plant. So it's very interesting how these things grow. And I will show you this one. That tongue is actually a flower petal, and it kind of comes back up, and it has a little doohickey at the back of it, right at that throat of the pod. And I consider it like that dangly thing in the back of our throat. So when you hear me talk about that, that's what I'm painting. And this is one, when they first come up, they're just perfectly straight. And then that beak comes out. And then there's a dead one right next to it. Still full of color. You can leave it alone and that will fall off and get more plants. And here's one just starting to grow. And it's just straight up. You can see all the transitions in it, but that's where I call the collar, where it transitions into color and that beak. And they're very, very abundant. I mean, the plants you can't kill these. You can chop, chop, chop away, and you got to use some really heavy shears to chop at this. Those stems are like celery, really strong and fibrous. So basically that's it with the pictures. Get those out of the way. And I wanted to show you some paintings real quick. So here's the one I did with that pregnant praying mantis on there. And I like to make my leaves all different colors, just the way they are. I personally prefer the pink center veins, so I do that a lot. And I trimmed this in amber gold luster. Then I have, similar to what we're going to do today, a first fire on a round plate. And I had this going all which directions because that's how it grows. and then a second fire with the background in, and just darkening where I needed to darken. A lot of times I can get these done in 2 fires, but then I spend time on the background to really make it come forward and alive. And then just for fun, I did the dead ones just to show people. So we'll get started painting now. And for me to paint, it's upside down for you, but hopefully I'll turn it around every so often and you can see it and it'll make sense to you. So my colors, I use, if I'm using Andreas Noble's colors, I use his orange and his red. And your Willoughby colors, any of your colors are fine. Your yellow red, blood red, all those colors work really well. So I'm going to start with a leaf first. I like to work from one side to the other. Normally we work top down, but for me, this works better going side over and over. So I'm going to load on my paint, all my greens. I like the chartreuse, a little bit of leaf green, and some of my brown green. And down here at the bottom, where it's going to be darkest, and I'm painting really dry. I might get a little bit oilier just so I can spread this on a little better for your viewing. And one of the things I did not point out to you was these leaves. I don't know if I can find the right picture. This is a good picture. You can see right in here, they have a lot of veins. They look almost striped. So I paint that way with all my colors. And I'm pulling it towards the back vein. And then I'm going to get a little bit darker. It's going to go right under that flower pod that I call the beak. Now, I don't mind getting some paint on that. I don't worry about it. I can wipe it off. But some people like to use their red resist. Then you could put your red resist on the flower pod, the stem, and this flower pod and the leaves, and this flower pod and the leaves, or head feathers as I call them. And then you can just do all your leaves and then peel your red resist off and paint your flowers. It's up to you how you like to do it, but that's an option. And then I'm going to get dark right here. So I'm putting in my shadows so that that flower pod is on top of that leaf. And then I'm going to get a little bit lighter as I go. And the other thing is I don't worry about getting really smooth on these because they are so fibrous. They're very thick. Got too much oil on that when I went into my oil. And then wherever you need to clean up, you can just use your wipeout tool. So I'm going to clean this up right here because I need a straight edge. Wipe my edge off. And it's okay to leave these a little bit wavy. They are not perfectly straight. And then I'll do this one. Now, I'm going to use a thick liner brush. Oops, that's So I'm using my a thicker liner brush, and I'm going to go into my pink. And this is just a pale pink. You can add a little ruby to it if you wanted to, because they are bright pink. So I'm going to do this one pink. And I come right down the side of that leaf. No questions. And then I'm going to come right up here. And they are pretty thick. I don't paint them quite as thick as they are, but and again, I want to trim that a little bit. And then I'm going to do this leaf. That's behind this leaf and behind this flower pod. So now I'm going to paint around all of that. So this is all dark here. And I need to get darker. And then I got really dark. So as I do this, I'm pulling towards that center vein, and it gives me those striations in the paint. If you're painting really dry, I'm a little bit oilier just to make this go on a little faster for the demo, but I want that shadow in there. And I'm coming right up to that center vein. Now this leaf has a turn back. So I'm making that straight edge where it turns over. Using a little bit lighter green. Then I'm going to go into my darker green, because you know where it's folded over, it's going to be a little darker. And these leaves do get pretty dark, but they do have the variations in greens in them. Then I'm going to come back and pull from that center vein to where this stem is. And go right around that flower pod. And then I like to use my wipeout tool. And I'm just gonna make that fold over a little more visible and give it a little bit of a highlight. Okay, then I'm gonna put my center vein in with my liner brush again. And I don't worry that I have green in there. If I went over the line, I just paint right over it. Now you can do those pink or yellow. I could have one of each because they grow that way on the plant. Now the other thing I want to do is these leaves do get a little bit of highlight. You don't see too much because they are so dark, but you can see some here, and you can see the variations in all the colors of the greens that it has. So now that I got those two leaves in, I'm going to come back and give it some highlight. More at the top. So I'll shadow down here at the bottom. Maybe give the top of this just a little bit of a highlight. I don't put too many in because I got those variations in the greens that kind of makes you think highlights anyway. Now the next step, I'm going to put in some of those veins. And I want to show you on the front of a leaf. On here, you can see those striations. These are pretty dark. These are more yellow. And that one has the yellow vein. So I make my veins yellow and they're pretty prominent on the first fire. So I'm using my square shader and I side load. And I'm going to just come down. Or I think I'm going to use my liner brush. I think it's easier. So I clean my pink off and I'm going to go into my yellow. This is a lemon yellow. That works good with the reds. And I just eyeball it about how far I want them apart. Sometimes they're a little bit closer, but I like the way I do it. And then on this side, they literally come and meet at that center vein. So sometimes you'll have a vein off here on a rose and a vein off this way on a rose leaf, but here they come together. So I'm going to do one here and a little one there because now it's folded over. I'll do one here. And I'm going to do one here. When on first fire, I leave them a little bit prominent like that, but you could soften them down if you wanted to. And I'm going to get a little bit more pink. Touch that up. Okay, now I'm going to go into the flowers. So the beak, I call that the beak. And I really like all the colors in these. So you can see here how bright those colors are. That's what I call the collar, where the top of the stem goes from green to yellow and it stands up a little bit. Then I have the neck and the throat. That's kind of a ruby red. I haven't been able to quite match that color yet, but I'll put blood red and then add ruby to it, or any red and add some ruby to it, or layer them red one fire and see how ruby looks over on a second fire. Comes up a little bit here, goes into the oranges and reds. You got yellow, you got like leaf green and chartreuse, and then you got purple. And it comes to a point, very sharp point. So I just clean my brush off. I'm going to use that same square shader. It's a 1/2 inch square shader. And I'm going to start with purple. Sometimes I put more purple in than they show because I like purple. And I'm going to go along the bottom here. I want to get that a little bit darker. Just like that. I don't play in it. I'm going to change colors. And I'm going to go into some yellow. Yellow and purple look great next to each other. And I kind of just layer it very softly. I don't overblend it. Then I'm going to go into my leaf green color. And then I'm gonna go into a little bit of chartreuse, maybe get some chartreuse in here towards the tip. Then I'm going to do my red. And here, clean that up. That stem and neck are going under this stem and this leaf. So I will use this dark red, that's Andrea Noble's dark red, and mix a little bit of his dark purple together. His dark purple fires more pink. And I'm going to just put that in there. And come up. And I'm going to stop about right there and wipe off. And now I'm going to go into his orange. But again, if you don't have these colors, yellow red, blood red is what I'd be using here with some ruby. And I'm going into my orange now, just going along that edge. Now I can see how all those colors are separated. So I wipe my brush off. And I'm going to just softly touch it. So it's blended. That's a little bit of a hard line right there. Maybe I'll add a little bit more orange to my brush and soften it out. And I leave that alone. That one's done. And then here is the stem of this one. And like I said, it looks like a piece of celery. It's thick and round. So I'm going to put some of my chartreuse on my brush and a little bit of the dark green. And this leaf needs to come over just a little bit. And then I'm going to just follow this stem all the way down. And I want some dark on the very edge, because that will help it look a little rounded. This leaf, fix it up there, I messed it up. And then at the bottom, it's going in under this leaf. So I'm going to put some dark there. And then I'm going to come up the other side. And they're pretty straight too. They're not wavy at all. And I think for my first fire, I would probably just barely touch this so you can see the separation. Maybe add just a little bit of dark on this side. Okay, then with your liner brush, you got to put that collar in that I showed you. It's yellow. So I go right on the edge of that and bring that yellow up. And you have it stick out just a little bit, like your collar. Think of your shirt when you stand your collar up. Now, I'm going to go into my reds and that pink again to make that neck and throat. So I'm going to use my dark red again and a little bit of Andrea's dark purple. And I'm going to just follow my line, my tracing line down, go across that collar a little bit. And this looks more red than pink. That's okay. And I'll straighten that out a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to stop with my red about right there. And now I'm going to go back into my purple. So you can see this goes pretty quick when you're painting. And how am I on time? I don't know what time it is. 10:28. We're doing good. And I see we have no questions. Or do I? Okay. Going into my purple now. I'm going to do the same thing. Lay that in there right where that red stopped. And I'm following my red tracing line. Then I'm going to go into my chartreuse or leaf green first. The middle gets a little bit lighter. That kind of makes it look like it's bulging. I'm going to do that upside down again. Just a little bit there. And I'm going to add a little bit of chartreuse. And then I'm going to add a little bit of my yellow. And I'm going to turn that this way and get some yellow in over here. Now I'm going to switch to orange. And I'm going to follow my tracing line again. Load up. And just try to bring it close there where they're blending a little. Got a little too much on my brush there. Excuse me. So every time you paint these, if you take pictures of them every day, you see the colors change. So that's why I have so many pictures. So I'm going to now just blend that very lightly and have that point come out pointed. So I like how that looks. Everything's blended. It's not too stripy. The purple's a little bit, but next time you can add some color over that. So now we're going to start on these head feathers. These are actually flower petals that came out of this beak, the flower pod, and they can be yellow and orange or a little bit of both. I like to paint them where these bigger, fatter petals are orange. And when they're bigger, they are like a leaf. There's a center vein in them with those same stripes that match this right here. But they aren't a leaf like this leaf, but it looks like an orange leaf. And then these thinner ones, you don't see any of that. And they're just like straight lines, straight yellow lines or straight orange lines that curve. So since I have orange on my brush, I'm going to do this first one. And again, I just lay my brush down and follow my tracing line. And pull it just a little bit towards the middle. Load up my brush again. And come up the other side. And then I'm going to pull towards the center a little bit on that. So I can see a little bit of my brush stroke, but if you paint it smooth, that's fine too. Because you'll see them both ways, but I'm going to just put a little bit of a highlight on the one side of that, and it starts giving me the illusion of a center vein without all the stripes. You could get too busy on that and take your attention away from your actual painting. So you can see what we have so far. So that's looking pretty good. And you can see, I like painting, I like these bright colors because you can see the actual flower can be really bright. Now I'm going to do this other orange one over here. And this has one overlapping it. I'm going to paint it like that's not even there right now. Come up one side. And down the other. And again, I'm just going to pull at it a little bit. And I like how that looks. So close up, you can see how that has the illusion of a vein and maybe some little tiny side veins coming into the center. And I think I'm going to do one more orange. And I'm going to come right down into there. It stops because these yellow ones that I'm going to paint come right over that. And I got a little messy here. And just for interest, I'm going to clean my brush and go into yellow now and finish that off. And shape this up. And they all come to a point. These aren't a sharp point like that. If you can actually stick that in your hand, that tip of this flower beak or the pod, and it's sharp. But these are not sharp when you touch them. Okay, now I'm going to go into using my liner brush and just lay these in. And this one is a little bit bigger. So now I'm going to add a little orange to that one. Just lightly touch it. So now you can see how that's coming about, looking pretty good. So the last thing I do on this is to put that tongue in there. That tongue never sticks out past the beak. So this is your beak. Here's that tongue. That tongue stops about right there. Think about it. If your mouth was smaller and your tongue was bigger, your tongue would be hanging out of your mouth. That's how I think about this. And for that color, it's a bluish purple color. So I'm going to use my pale blue with a little bit of purple mixed in. And I'm going to do the straight line first. This comes right out of that throat. I'm going to stop it about right there. My tracing line went too far. And this comes to a point. Very interesting fact. Once in a while, you'll see these be double forked like a snake's tongue. Now I'm going to load up my brush again. And right here at the back of that is that doohickey like we have hanging down in the back of our throats. So I put that in. And I'll make this just a tad sharper looking. Okay, now this tongue is really another type of flower petal on it. And it goes straight and then it curls back up. So I lay my brush down on the line that I made and come like this and make a C curve. And there, I'll turn it for you to see. And let me hold that up. You can see how that looks. So it's coming along pretty good. And I would continue on just like that. But now in the last little bit of time we have, I want to show you how I would do the second fire. So I have this to work on. So I've done that just like I've shown you. Purples, yellows, a little bit of green, the orange. These head feathers come right out of this beak, so you want to make sure they're attached. Now, one thing that I don't do is when they come out, they're white. I don't like that white. It's not going to look good in my painting to get it to look like the real flower. So I just keep them orange or yellow. So I'll show you a leaf. I'll do this leaf this time for how I would paint it for the second time on a second fire. And it's the lightest of my leaves because it's on top of everything else, with the exception of the stem. So I'm going to go into my greens again. I like to put 3 greens on my brush. That's just me. So I use this time I'm using his yellow green, his darker green, and then his shading green, which to me is like a yellow brown green. And I'm going to come here and just scoot this up so you can see. Come right along there where it ends at that other leaf. And I'm going to get just a little dark and swing this around and follow that up because that stem is on top. So I want that shadowed a little bit there. And then I would wipe out for that stem. So I got that one little section of that leaf painted. And then I'm going to come along this side and do the same thing. So it sets that stem up. And then I'm going to get my darks in down here. Get a little darker with that brown green and a little bit of black green. Get that all in. Okay. Then I'm going to pull this way. Load up my brush. So I'm just laying that in the same way I did the first time. And you can see some of my yellow stripes. I'll put those back in. I'm painting right over them, but you can see them still. I'm going to turn it this way. And along my pink center vein there, I'm going to just get a little bit of dark. So that everything looks just right. Come on this edge. I'm painting right over those head feathers there. Those can be wiped out. Or if you like to resist, you can use your resist on the flowers again and touch up your leaves first. So I like how that looks. I like all the variations of the greens on this top leaf. So I'm loading up my greens again. Now I'm going to come along this edge and just lay that in, coming right down to the pink center vein. If you paint drier and pull, you get really good striations. And I'm mostly a dry painter, a little bit oily today just to make it go a little better. Now I want this to stay pink. So this time I'm wiping it off. On my first fire, I just go right through it. But here I want to wipe it off. And you get that little buildup of paint there. Oh, messing it up again. Like that. And I'm going to touch this up and make it a little bit darker. And I'm going to go into his dark purple a little bit more with the light pink. You can use pink and ruby. And just lay that in. This one might come out really bright, but as you can see from the pictures, they do. And the next day they can look totally different. It's an amazing plant. I really like it. And it doesn't grow here in Tennessee. I don't think you guys have any in Texas either, but I'm not sure about that. So next we're ready for the yellow veins. I'm going to put that in real quick, and then I'm going to do the flower. So I can see where this one is right here. So this one has to be right here. They meet. They are not offset at all. And here's where you can get a little bit darker or a little bit lighter. I don't want the side veins to be the focus of the leaf. So I'm going to try to put him in lighter. But for my first fire, I like to see them. And it's just those little details that finish off your painting that make it complete. Here, those are going under there. You don't really see them. And maybe one more here. So I like how that looks. You can see all my different colors and all the brush strokes. So now I'm going to darken this guy. And again, now we are painting that stem, and it's like celery. And I don't need to do a lot to it. I'm going to just put a little bit of green on it and shape up the edges of it. And then I'm going to come up the other side. And soften it out. And I didn't paint anything in the middle. I might even just take a little bit of color back out, giving that a highlight right in there. And then I'm going to go into my yellow and do that collar again. Shape it up. Then do that throat again. And I'm going to do my dark red and a little bit of the dark purple. And the dark purple, remember, I'm using Andrea Noble's paints that fires a little more pink, but you can use your regular pink and some ruby. And I got that a little dark, but that's okay. I'm going to soften it on up towards that purple and clean my brush off again and go into my purple. And I don't need a lot. That shade of purple that I have is fine. I'm just going to soften this out at the throat so that I mix that purple and that red so it doesn't stop and start. Maybe darken this a little bit up in here. Can even add a little purple in the middle if I want. Maybe tap a little bit of that out. I got a little too much. Then I'm going to go into I see a lot of green in that. I'm going to put a little bit of green, but mainly yellow. This one doesn't have as much yellow in it, so I'm going to put yellow in it more. And I'm just ever so softly blending that. I don't want you to overmix it, and then you have mud, and then you're going to have an ugly beak, which is that flower pod. Now I'm going to go into my orange and finish this one off. And it's real easy. Just keep your brush along that edge. And then I'm going to wipe off. And blend it just a little bit. And I'd say that's done. And since I have orange, here's a flower pod or flower leaf of those head feathers where it's yellow in the middle. You can leave some of that. I'm going to get that darker orange down in here where it's coming out. I actually like to go almost onto the pod and then run that over like that. And I like that yellow showing through, so I'm going to leave it. Then I'm going to just go over this and darken it up a little bit. Leave a little highlight. Do the same on this one. Same on this one. And I'm going to show you the yellows next, and then one more thing I would like to show you. You can even use your wipeout tool at this stage and wipe out a few of those little veins that show on these bigger ones. But I don't like to get too carried away with that. Now, I painted that first one fire yellow, but I like to go into like a yellow brown, just a little bit, especially on the tips out there when you're against the white. If you weren't putting background in, you want that to show up. And this one went to orange down there, so I'm going to add a little bit of orange in there. Then go back to my yellow with just a little bit of yellow brown. Keep my arm out of this. And I like that. Next is finishing off that tongue, and it's just adding a little bit of shading to it. It's colors on there pretty good. I'm gonna make that doohickey there a little bit stronger. Come out this way, and look at that. My tongue is sticking out farther. So I basically need to make this more pointed. You get carried away when you're painting and you don't realize. So easily fixed because they do get pointy. And then I'm going to use just a little bit of the lavender, my purple, and come up and touch up that with a little C curve on the end. And that's it. However, I want to show you one more thing. A lot of the leaves, as I showed you before, get little brown edges on them. Brown edges on them. These are older plants, so they're starting that decaying process. So I put a little bit of brown on my liner brush, and I'll do it to this main leaf. And I'm just going to put a little squiggle. I don't make it solid line. I kind of stop and start. Do some over here. Do some there. And you don't have to do the whole thing, but it does add to your painting. So now if I turn it this way for you to see, there you can see all those details here and on this, and you just repeat. So are there any questions? Okay, great. I'm glad you liked it, Marilee. And hi, Anna and Kelly and Monique. So I don't see your faces, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be around here for another couple minutes if you want to ask any questions.